square was a hub for scavengers from all over what was left of North America. Penny had told Nita that there were actually several hubs like the square spread out all over the planet. They were originally created and insulated as safe zones for expeditions sponsored by the Avalon government with the intent of acquiring artifacts from Earth's past. However, those explorers soon discovered that Earth was not completely deserted after making contact with the first scavengers, both human and Ket. The armored Kets, what everyone called the big ones, had spared the human survivors they had found still living on the planet and made them into indentured servants alongside the slim Kets, which were the smaller, skinnier variety of the aliens. Despite their large and imposing stature, the armored Kets had no interest in fighting the explorers, but instead proposed a compromise. The Kets were the galaxy's best scavengers, and for a price they would brave the poisoned wilds of the dead planet Earth and dig up as many fossils as the Avalon government wanted. Thus, the expedition hubs became scavenger hubs. Just like the Sons of Mars had rejected Avalon to live on another planet, so too were there many human beings who voluntarily chose to live as scavengers on the old world. Of course, many were also exiled, sometimes sentenced to indentured servitude, to a Ket master as punishment for a crime. Caslin Buchanan was such a man, or at least he used to be. Former officer in Avalon's military, the Avalon Defense Force, Kaz was at the center of a corruption scandal that saw him stripped of his rank and exiled to the square. After his master, an armored Ket named Quar, passed away, Kaz was granted his freedom. Instead of returning to Avalon, however, he chose to stay and lead a group of free scavengers, sharing most of their profits with the poorer residents of the square. Kaz was no stranger to trouble. In fact, at least once before, trouble had come in the form of a red-headed Avalon spy in a leather bomber jacket with a penchant for complicating things. Trouble, it seemed, had found her way back to his door once again. "What kind of mess are you getting me into this time, Thorn?" Kaz leaned back, eyes darting between the two women. "I'll be out of your hair in no time, Kaz," Penny smirked. The man scoffed with a grin. "Smart ass. But seriously, what's the issue this time?" Nita looked between the two of them, noting the somewhat playful way they interacted, and opened her mouth to say something. However, before she could say anything, Penny took a step toward the desk. "I'm trying to track down a square scavenger named Grell," she said. "Is he one of yours?" "No," Kaz didn't hesitate. "I know him, but he used to work for the Archivist." Penny tilted her head to one side. "The Archivist used scavengers?" "For off-world hunts," Kaz replied. "A lot of Earth artifacts end up all over the system. Whenever he'd get a lead on one, he'd send Grell to go fetch it." Penny rubbed her chin and sat down on a cushioned leather chair in front of Kaz's desk. "So I take it he was very loyal, not the kind to sell anything he'd find before bringing it back." "Not unless holding onto it was dangerous to his health," the scavenger leader narrowed his eyes. "I think we both know what we're talking about here." "Hold on a second," Nita finally spoke up and took a step forward. "The Archivist? Earth artifacts?" Kaz smiled. "Sorry, Dr. Baxter, where are my manners? I'm forgetting you're from a entirely different era." Nita was struck with how polite and well-spoken Kaz was. Both his mannerisms and the well-maintained state of his office set an interesting contrast against the cobbled-together junk world that Earth had become. "The Archivist used to be a custodian of what we call the Earth Archives," Kaz continued. "It's a building over on the other side of the square which houses a lot of old artifacts from Earth's past. Most of it would be considered useless junk even by most scavenger standards. But the Archivist believed in preserving as much of the planet's past as possible. He was part historian, part collector." "You keep talking about him in the past tense," Penny said. Kaz sighed and leaned back in his chair. "Yeah, well, unfortunately a splinter group of scavengers who don't believe in working with me or my crew, or following the loose set of laws we've got here, moved into the archives a couple of weeks ago. The Archivist didn't survive the transition." As Kaz's meaning dawned on her, Nita's shoulders dropped and she shook her head. Penny grunted in frustration. "Damn it," she spat. "Who the hell are these scavengers? Why hasn't anyone done anything about it?" Kaz's expression soured. "Well, unfortunately, we don't have a big shiny government or a big shiny police force to go and punish every asshole who decides to commit a crime. Instead, we all been working on an honor system wherein if you mess up, you get tossed into the dust. This place functions by way of swift justice and the understanding of the consequences." "Yeah, and?" Penny challenged him. "And," Kaz raised his voice, "we're talking about a fairly large group of dissidents that I can't just toss out. We're on the verge of dealing with a major uprising here, and if I don't play my cards right, me and everyone I've sworn to protect will end up out in the dust ourselves." Penny deflated. "Right. I'm sorry, Kaz. He shook his head. We don't rely on Avalon's protection or guidance. You know why? Because it's never been offered. Yeah, a good man died and so did a few others. Many more will if I don't get this under control. So whatever it is you're looking for, I suggest you finish your investigation and get out of our way, because I sure as hell know you're not here for us. Penny sighed and leaned forward. What can I do to help? The scavenger chuckled. Help? Thorn, the last time you tried to help, we were left with a pretty big mess to clean up. Okay, so it wasn't a neat and tidy solution, but it got the job done, right? Kaz scratched the back of his head. Yeah, I suppose so, but I'm not really in the position to clean up explosive debris with all the other crap I got on my plate right now. Explosive debris? Nita looked at Penny, who waved her away. Okay, Penny looked off and thought. I can help without explosions. You sure about that? The scavenger leader didn't seem convinced. Mostly sure? Kaz steadied her for a tense moment and then gestured to Nita. This is all about her, isn't it? Penny looked at the other woman standing awkwardly behind them and then back to Kaz. What do you know? I know you're not the first ones to come asking for Grell and what he found. Kaz folded his hands on the desk. Shortly after the last party came by is when there was that uprising. The archives were taken over. Penny looked up, piecing things together. Sons of Mars. They facilitated that little uprising to cover something up in the archives. Good luck rummaging through that junk pile, Kaz said and stood up, straightening his olive drab jacket. I've got other things to be concerned with right now, like getting food and medicine to the families of at least 100 scavengers. Penny stood. All right, I'll go have a talk with these new custodians of the archives. Kaz stopped and exhaled. When you say talk, I hear something entirely different. Probably best we leave it at that. Kaz looked at Nita. I'm not sure why she dragged you into this. You probably would have been safer on her ship. I wanted to come. Nita's voice was shaking. I want to see this through. If this Grell can tell us anything about how I came to be here and not on Earth in 1969, then we have to find him. Grell is long gone, Kaz said, long before the sun showed up. He obviously had an inkling from the beginning that he was getting into something larger than himself. That's why you got rid of your pod. Was there another pod? Kaz shrugged. Sorry, Doc. No idea. Nita's shoulders dropped again and she nodded. All right. I'm sure these new archivists can tell us something. Penny began moving toward the door. You know, Kaz said, if you want to help, there's a lot of people who could use medical attention. Oh, I'm not a medical doctor. Nita put a hand to her chest. Kaz smiled. Wasn't talking to you, Doc. Nita looked at Penny with wide eyes. What? Penny avoided Nita's gaze and waved Kaz away. Yeah, maybe I can come back when things aren't so tense. Perhaps for a social visit? The man grinned at her. Penny returned the grin. Maybe. Nita looked between them and backed away toward the door. Penny noticed her shrinking away and followed. Nothing else was said, and both women exited the station. They pushed their way through the crowd of scavengers until they were on a street corner. So, Nita said, you and him? Nothing serious, Penny said, pulling her sidearm and checking her ammo. Just business? Penny scoffed. No, not just business. But I'm not moving in with him or anything. Nita nodded and was quiet for a long moment before saying, You're a doctor? Is that what you were doing before all this? Something like that. Penny narrowed her gaze on a building on the opposite side of the square. Ancient history. Nita lifted her hands and let them fall to her sides. Trying to get Penny to talk about anything personal was like pulling teeth. She somewhat understood the need to be candid. After all, Penny was some kind of covert government agent. But it didn't help alleviate Nita's overwhelming sense of loneliness. Penny had said before that she was Nita's only friend, and granted, she was sure it was just an expression and nothing more. With everything happening in the world she knew turned to dust, she secretly hoped it would eventually mean more than that. She didn't know for sure yet if Milo was still alive, and thus she was completely alone in this new world. Alone and hunted. See that movie theater over there? Penny pointed. That's the archives building. Nita followed where Penny was pointing and saw a dilapidated theater, most of the letters missing from its yellowing marquee. A crowd of patchwork people stood around the boarded-up box office. Nita looked up and could see a billboard with the words, War is over, partially ripped away. So sad, she said. So ironic. Penny followed her gaze. They meant well. John and Yoko, I mean. Nita looked at her. You know about John Lennon and Yoko Ono? Of course I do. I know about all the Beatles. I also know we're standing on 7th Avenue, Broadway's just over there. Rockefeller Center is behind us. Most of these theaters used to show adult films, and I recognize all those billboards. Coca-Cola, Canadian Club Whiskey, Kent cigarettes. Wait. Nita held up her hands. How do you know so much about all this? Penny shrugged. Kind of a Earth history buff, I guess you could say. Earth history buff? Nita was looking at her in disbelief. I can't even fathom that. Did you ever study ancient cultures in school? I took anthropology courses in college, sure. Same thing. No, Nita said. It's not the same thing. It's like being an Egyptologist talking to a person from ancient Egypt. You have any idea how strange that is? Stranger than the giant bug people selling empty cola bottles? Penny gestured to a nearby merchant stall. I don't know, Nita. I would think me knowing a lot about Earth's history would be the least weirdest thing here. Nita threw up her hands again. Fair enough. So now what? We go talk to the new archivist. Penny began crossing the street toward the broken down theater, and find out what the Sons don't want found in the archives. I take it there will be little actual talking, Nita said, following along. That depends on how eager they are to listen.